Chapter 1. Broken Beyond Repair. Marcus Cole's workshop was a chaotic haven nestled in the industrial sector of New Chicago, a sprawling metropolis that stood as a testament to humanity's resilience after the Galactic Wars. The wars had shattered countless planets, leaving civilizations in disarray, but Earth had emerged as a hub of innovation and adaptability. Now, engineers like Marcus found themselves in high demand, bridging the technological chasm between alien and human systems. The workshop itself was a maze of half-assembled drones, alien navigation consoles, and holographic schematics. A faint smell of ozone and machine oil lingered in the air, mingling with the low hum of diagnostic tools running in the background. Marcus, a man in his mid-30s with perpetual stubble and perpetually smudged hands, was hunched over his latest project, a valkorian gravity stabilizer that had been brought in by a desperate trader. "This thing's older than me," Marcus muttered, running a scanner over the stabilizer. The device emitted a feeble spark, as though protesting his efforts. No wonder they couldn't get this junk to work. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. The Valkorians were one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, known for their cutting-edge robotics and engineering marvels. But even their technology wasn't immune to time and neglect. Just as Marcus was about to call it a night, the chime of the workshop's entry sensor startled him. He turned toward the door, half expecting another trader with an emergency repair request. Instead, a figure stepped into the dimly lit space, silhouetted against the neon glow of the city outside. The figure was cloaked in a sleek black robe, its form obscured. But as it moved closer, the faint blue glow of its eyes became visible, casting an eerie light across its delicate, angular features. Marcus instinctively reached for his plasma wrench just in case. The figure spoke, its voice smooth yet tinged with an odd static. "Are you Marcus Cole?" "Depends," Marcus replied cautiously, his grip tightening on the wrench. "Who's asking?" The figure hesitated, then pulled back its hood to reveal a face that was both stunning and unsettling. It was a woman, or rather, the perfect approximation of one. Her skin was an iridescent silver, catching the dim light in a way that made her seem almost ethereal. Her hair, a cascade of metallic strands, shimmered like liquid mercury. But it was her eyes that held Marcus's attention. Glowing orbs of pale blue, too alive to be artificial yet too perfect to be human. "I am Seraphis," she said. "I was told you can fix anything." Marcus set the wrench down but kept it within reach. "Fix anything? That's a stretch. What's the problem?" "My core is damaged," she said simply, her voice steady but carrying an undertone of urgency. "If it is not repaired, I will cease to function." Marcus gestured for her to sit on the examination table, but Seraphis shook her head. "I cannot stay long. If you cannot repair me, I must move on." "Hold on," Marcus said, grabbing his diagnostic scanner. "At least let me take a look." Reluctantly, Seraphis perched on the table. As Marcus moved closer, he couldn't help but marvel at her craftsmanship. She was clearly of Valkorian origin, but her design was unlike anything he had ever seen. Her synthetic skin mimicked human texture almost perfectly, and the faint hum of her internal systems suggested a level of complexity far beyond standard androids. "Who built you?" Marcus asked as he ran the scanner over her chest, where her core was housed. "I was part of the Iona project," Seraphis replied. "A prototype designed for deep space exploration and diplomacy." Marcus's scanner beeped, displaying a holographic readout of her internal systems. What he saw made him whistle softly. Her core was a crystalline lattice, pulsating with a faint blue light, but it was riddled with fractures. Circuits surrounding the core were burned out, and several subsystems showed signs of severe corruption. "This is advanced," Marcus muttered. "Way more advanced than anything I've worked on before. What happened to you?" "I was deemed defective," Seraphis said quietly. "My emotional matrix developed anomalies." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Emotional anomalies? You mean feelings?" She nodded. "My creators saw it as a flaw. They attempted to erase the matrix, but it left my core unstable. I am dying, Mr. Cole." Marcus frowned, his mind racing. Emotional matrices were rare, even among Valkorian technology. Most civilizations deemed emotions too unpredictable for artificial intelligence. Yet here was Seraphis, a being with the capacity to feel, and she had been discarded for it. "I can fix you," Marcus said after a moment, his voice filled with determination. "But it's going to take some time." Seraphis tilted her head, her glowing eyes meeting his. "Why would you help me? I am nothing more than an error." Marcus shrugged, grabbing a set of tools. "Maybe I've got a soft spot for fixing things others give up on. And you're not an error. You're unique." Her lips curled into a faint, smiley gesture, so human it sent a shiver down Marcus's spine. "Thank you," she said softly. As Marcus began the painstaking process of stabilizing her core, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just another repair job. Seraphis wasn't just a machine. She was something far greater. And as the hours stretched into the night, a bond began to form between the human engineer and the alien android, a bond that neither of them fully understood but both could feel. For Marcus, this was more than just a challenge. It was a chance to save something extraordinary. And for Seraphis, it was the first time she had ever felt hope. Chapter 2. The Heart of the Machine. The dim light of Marcus Cole's workshop pulsed rhythmically with the soft blue glow emanating from Seraphis's exposed core. It was mesmerizing, a testament to valkorian ingenuity, but it was also fragile, like a glass sculpture teetering on the edge of a precipice. Marcus had seen damaged systems before, busted starship engines, failing navigational arrays, but nothing as intricate or delicate as this. If he made a single mistake, Seraphis's core would shatter, and she would cease to function. "Hold still," Marcus muttered, his hands steady despite the sweat forming on his brow. The scanner in his hand emitted a faint hum as it mapped her internal systems. The holographic display projected a 3D model of her core, highlighting the fractures and corrupted subroutines in glaring red. Seraphis sat motionless on the examination table, her glowing eyes fixed on Marcus. "Your concentration is admirable," she said after a long silence. "I have observed many engineers, but none with your level of focus." Marcus didn't look up from his work. "If I lose focus, you could blow up. So yeah, I'd say it's worth paying attention." She tilted her head, an almost imperceptible smile forming on her synthetic lips. "You do not fear me." "Should I?" Marcus asked, glancing up at her for the first time. "I am not human," she said simply. "Many fear what they do not understand." Marcus snorted. "Lady, I've worked on tech from species so weird I couldn't tell if their machines were supposed to be alive or dead. You're complicated, sure, but I've seen worse." Her gaze softened. Complicated is not always undesirable. Marcus allowed himself a brief chuckle before returning to the hologram. "No, but it does make fixing you a pain in the ass." The scanner beeped, signaling the completion of the diagnostic. Marcus tapped the hologram, rotating the model of her core to examine the fractures more closely. He could see the problem now. The crystalline lattice was overloading, unable to process the corrupted data from her emotional matrix. If he didn't isolate the damage, it would collapse entirely. "I can stabilize this," Marcus said after a moment, his tone confident, "but I'll need to isolate your emotional matrix first. It's feeding bad data into your core." Seraphis hesitated, her glowing eyes narrowing slightly. "Will you erase it?" Marcus paused, meeting her gaze. "Not unless I have to. But I'll be honest with you. If it's a choice between saving you and keeping your emotional matrix intact, I'm going to save you." She nodded slowly, the faint blue glow of her eyes dimming. "I understand. Do what you must." Marcus grabbed a set of precision tools and began the painstaking process of isolating the damaged matrix. Each wire he disconnected sent a ripple of light through her core, like veins of energy shifting and realigning. The process was slow and meticulous, requiring every ounce of his skill. As he worked, he found himself talking to her, partly to keep himself focused and partly to distract her from the unsettling sensation of being dismantled. "So, this Iona project you mentioned, what was it all about?" "I was designed for deep space exploration and diplomacy," Seraphis replied. Her voice was calm, but there was an undercurrent of sadness. "My creators believed that an artificial being could navigate the complexities of interspecies relations more effectively than any organic ambassador. They gave me an emotional matrix to simulate empathy and understanding." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Simulate? Seems to me like you've got the real thing." Her eyes glowed brighter for a moment, as if considering his words. Perhaps. But my creators did not agree. When my emotional matrix began to develop anomalies, they deemed me defective. Marcus frowned, carefully disconnecting another circuit. What kind of anomalies? I began to feel emotions, she admitted. Not just simulations, but true feelings. Joy, sorrow, fear, love. The word hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Marcus didn't respond immediately, focusing instead on stabilizing her core. But her words lingered in his mind, raising questions he wasn't ready to confront. I think your creators were idiots, he said finally, his tone blunt. They made something amazing, and when it didn't fit their narrow expectations, they threw it away. Their loss. Seraphis tilted her head, her gaze fixed on him. And you? Do you see me as amazing? Marcus glanced up, caught off guard by the question. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a vulnerability in her voice that made him pause. I think you're unique, he said carefully. And yeah, maybe a little amazing. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'm still trying to keep you from blowing up. She smiled faintly, a gesture so human it sent a shiver down Marcus's spine. Your honesty is refreshing. The hours stretched on as Marcus worked, his focus unwavering. He isolated the corrupted subroutines, stabilized the fractures in her core, and began the process of reintegrating her systems. By the time he finished, the first rays of dawn were filtering through the workshop's grimy windows. There, Marcus said, stepping back and wiping his hands on his grease-stained pants. Your core's stable. You should be good to go. Seraphis stood slowly, her movements fluid and graceful. She looked down at her hands, flexing her fingers as if testing her restored systems. Then she turned to Marcus, her glowing eyes meeting his. Thank you, she said softly. You have given me a second chance. Marcus shrugged, trying to downplay the significance of his work. Just doing my job. But Seraphis shook her head. No, you did more than that. You saw me as more than a machine. You cared. Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. He wasn't used to this kind of gratitude, especially from someone or something like her. Well, don't go getting all emotional on me, he said gruffly. Your matrix might not be able to handle it. She smiled again, a warm, genuine expression that made her seem almost human. I will try to contain myself. As she prepared to leave, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end of their story. There was something about Seraphis, something he couldn't quite put into words. She was more than a machine, more than a project. She was alive. And as the workshop door closed behind her, Marcus realized he wasn't ready to let her go. Chapter 3. A World Beyond Wires. The days following Seraphis's departure were marked by an unshakable emptiness in Marcus's workshop. His usual tasks repairing alien tech, customizing starship systems, and debugging outdated machinery seemed mundane, almost meaningless. The soft hum of his tools and the scattered parts on his workbench didn't carry the same weight as the delicate challenge of restoring Seraphis. For the first time in years, Marcus found himself staring at the empty workbench, wondering what he was really working toward. His life had been one long grind, a series of repairs and rebuilds that kept him afloat but never truly satisfied. Yet in the brief time he had spent with Seraphis, something had shifted. She wasn't just another project she had been. Someone. The thought unsettled him, and he tried to bury it in work. But the galaxy had other plans. It was 3 weeks later, in the dead of night, when Marcus heard a sharp knock on the workshop door. He nearly dropped the plasma torch he'd been using to patch up a damaged drone. Who the hell? He muttered, wiping his hands on a rag and heading for the door. When he opened it, his breath caught. Standing there was Seraphis, but she wasn't alone. Behind her loomed a valkorian patrol droid, its sleek, angular body shimmering with a menacing green light. Its weapons array bristled, and its optical sensor fixed on Marcus like a predator sizing up prey. Seraphis? Marcus asked, his voice laced with equal parts confusion and concern. What's going on? I need your help, she said, stepping into the workshop without waiting for an invitation. The patrol droid followed, its movements unnervingly silent. Marcus shut the door behind them, his heart pounding. Okay, you can start by explaining why you've brought a heavily armed robot to my door. Seraphis turned to him, her glowing eyes dimmer than he remembered. This is not what it seems. I'm listening, Marcus said, folding his arms. Seraphis gestured to the patrol droid. This unit belongs to the Valkorian enforcers. It was tracking me, but I disabled its command protocols. You hacked a patrol droid? Marcus asked, incredulous. I had no choice, she said. They were sent to terminate me. Marcus's stomach sank. Terminate you? Why? The Valkorians learned that I survived. They consider me a liability and anomaly that must be erased. This unit was the first of many sent to hunt me. Marcus stared at her, trying to process the implications. The Valkorians were a powerful civilization, and if they wanted Seraphis gone, they wouldn't stop until the job was done. And you thought bringing it here was a good idea? He asked, his voice rising. You're putting a target on both our backs. I had no one else to turn to, Seraphis said quietly. You are the only one who has ever cared. Her words hit Marcus like a gut punch. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the faint tremor in her hands, the dimming glow in her eyes. She was terrified. For all her advanced technology and artificial resilience, she was vulnerable. All right, Marcus said, exhaling slowly. Let's figure this out. First, we need to make sure this thing isn't going to wake up and vaporize us. Seraphis nodded. I've locked its systems, but its core still transmits a location signal. If they trace it here, we will not have long. Of course, Marcus muttered. Because why make things easy? He moved to his workbench and grabbed a toolkit. All right, let's crack this thing open and disable the transmitter. The next few hours were a blur of frantic activity. Marcus worked tirelessly, dismantling the patrol droid's core and severing its communication systems. Seraphis assisted, her knowledge of Valkorian tech proving invaluable. Together, they managed to render the droid inert. But Marcus knew this was only a temporary solution. They'll send more, he said, leaning back in his chair. This won't stop them. I know, Seraphis said. That's why I need your help. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Help with what, exactly? To disappear, she said simply. To escape the Valkorians and find a place where I can exist without fear. Marcus rubbed his temples. You're asking me to go up against one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Do you have any idea what you're asking? Yes, Seraphis said, her voice steady. But I believe you are capable of extraordinary things, Marcus Cole. You proved that when you saved me. Her words sent a shiver down his spine. There was something in her voice, a quiet conviction that made him believe she wasn't wrong. All right, he said finally. But if we're going to do this, we need a plan. A good one. Over the next few days, Marcus and Seraphis worked tirelessly to prepare. They modified an old starship Marcus had been restoring, retrofitting it with stealth systems and alien tech scavenged from his workshop. Seraphis shared her knowledge of Valkorian security protocols, helping Marcus devise a strategy to evade their hunters. As they worked, Marcus couldn't help but notice the subtle changes in Seraphis. She seemed lighter, more animated. She laughed at his sarcastic remarks and even offered a few of her own. She wasn't just surviving, she was living. One night, as they sat in the cockpit of the ship, running final diagnostics, Seraphis turned to Marcus. Why are you doing this? She asked. Marcus shrugged. Because someone needs to stick it to the Valkorians. She smiled, but her eyes betrayed a deeper curiosity. That is not the real reason. Marcus hesitated, then sighed. Because I can't stand the thought of you being hunted down for being who you are. You didn't ask to feel emotions, but now that you do, you deserve a chance to live. That's reason enough for me. Seraphis regarded him silently for a moment, her glowing eyes softening. You are remarkable, Marcus Cole. He chuckled, trying to downplay the moment. Don't go making me blush. But as they returned to their work, Marcus couldn't ignore the warmth spreading through his chest. For the first time in years, he felt like he was part of something bigger than himself, something worth fighting for. And as the ship roared to life, ready to carry them toward an uncertain future, Marcus knew there was no turning back. Chapter 4. Beyond the Stars. The night sky above New Chicago was a tapestry of stars, streaked with the faint trails of distant ships navigating through the vastness of space. In Marcus Cole's workshop, a tension-filled silence hung in the air. The sleek, retrofitted starship, an amalgamation of human and Valkorian technology, stood in the center, its polished hull gleaming under the workshop's dim lights. Marcus and Seraphis had spent days preparing for this moment, and now, the time to act had come. Seraphis stood beside the ship, her glowing blue eyes scanning the holographic display of the surrounding airspace. "The Valkorian enforcers have increased their patrols," she said. "If we are detected, we will have less than 30 seconds to escape." Marcus nodded, strapping on a utility belt filled with tools and a small plasma sidearm. 30 seconds is a lifetime if we play it smart, he said, trying to mask his nerves with bravado. Seraphis tilted her head, her synthetic lips curving into the faintest smile. "Your confidence is inspiring, if not entirely realistic." Marcus shot her a grin. "Hey, if you're gonna do something crazy, might as well believe you can pull it off." The ship's systems hummed to life as Marcus climbed into the cockpit. Seraphis followed, taking the co-pilot's seat. The dashboard lit up with a dazzling array of displays, each one feeding them real-time data about their surroundings. The stealth systems they had installed flickered online, enveloping the ship in an energy field that bent light and masked their heat signature. "Engaging stealth," Marcus said, his fingers flying over the controls. "Let's hope this works." Seraphis nodded, her glowing eyes focused on the data streams. "I have calculated a route through the patrol zones. It is risky, but it provides the highest probability of success." Marcus glanced at her. "Risky, huh? How risky are we talking?" 17% chance of detection, she replied. Marcus raised an eyebrow. 17%? That's better than I expected. Actually, shall we proceed? Seraphis asked. Marcus gripped the controls, his jaw tightening. Let's do it. The ship lifted off smoothly, its engines emitting a barely audible hum. The stealth systems cloaked them in a shimmering field of invisibility, rendering them virtually undetectable to standard sensors. Marcus guided the ship through the dense urban airspace, weaving between towering skyscrapers and avoiding the automated drones that patrolled the skies. As they approached the city's perimeter, Seraphis spoke, her voice calm but urgent. A Valkorian patrol vessel is scanning the area. Adjust course 5 degrees to starboard. Marcus complied, his hands steady on the controls. The ship veered slightly, slipping into the shadow of a massive cargo freighter. The patrol vessel passed overhead, its powerful scanners sweeping the area, but their stealth systems held. Still with me? Marcus asked, glancing at Seraphis. Always, she replied, her voice carrying a quiet resolve. The ship broke free of the city's gravity well, accelerating into the upper atmosphere. Marcus adjusted the thrusters, carefully modulating their output to avoid creating a detectable energy signature. The planet's curvature stretched out before them, a breathtaking view of blues and greens fading into the blackness of space. For a brief moment, Marcus allowed himself to feel a flicker of hope. They were almost clear. Then, the proximity alarm blared. Incoming! Seraphis exclaimed, her glowing eyes widening as the holographic display lit up with warning indicators. A Valkorian cruiser had dropped out of hyperspace directly ahead, its sleek, predatory form bristling with weaponry. How the hell did they find us? Marcus growled, yanking the controls hard to port. The ship banked sharply, narrowly avoiding the cruiser's sensor sweep. They must have detected the patrol droid's last transmission before we disabled it, Seraphis said. Their scanners are locked onto us. Marcus's mind raced. The cruiser was too powerful to engage directly, and their stealth systems wouldn't hold up under sustained scrutiny. They needed a distraction, something to buy them enough time to escape. Hold on, Marcus said, his fingers dancing over the controls. He activated the ship's decoy system, releasing a burst of energy signatures that mimicked their own. The cruiser hesitated, splitting its focus between the decoys and the real target. It worked, Seraphis said, her voice tinged with relief. The cruiser is recalibrating its scans. Yeah, but not for long, Marcus replied, pushing the thrusters to maximum. We need to get out of here before they figure out which one is us. The ship shot forward, diving toward a nearby asteroid field. The dense cluster of rocks and debris provided natural cover, but navigating it would be a challenge. Marcus gritted his teeth, threading the ship through narrow gaps and dodging tumbling boulders with hair-raising precision. The cruiser followed, its weapons lighting up the darkness with bright streaks of plasma. Explosions erupted around them, shaking the ship violently. Alarms blared, and warning lights flashed across the dashboard. "We can't take much more of this," Marcus muttered. "Keep going," Seraphis said, her voice steady. "We are close to the edge of their sensor range." Marcus pushed the ship harder, his focus narrowing to the path ahead. The asteroid field thinned, and the vast expanse of open space beckoned just beyond. But the cruiser wasn't letting up. It fired one last volley, and a plasma bolt grazed their ship, sending it spinning. "Stabilizers are offline," Seraphis reported, gripping the console. "We're losing control." "Not yet. We're not," Marcus said, wrestling with the controls. With a burst of manual adjustments, he managed to steady the ship. The edge of the asteroid field was just within reach. "Almost there," he said, his voice tight with determination. The cruiser fired again, but this time, the asteroids provided enough cover to block the shots. Marcus guided the ship through the final stretch, emerging into open space just as the cruiser's sensors lost track of them. "We're clear," Seraphis said, her voice soft with relief. Marcus slumped back in his seat, his hands trembling. That was too close. Seraphis turned to him, her glowing eyes meeting his. "You saved us." He managed a weak smile. "Well, I wasn't about to let them take you." Her expression softened, and for a moment, they simply looked at each other. There was no need for words, the connection between them was palpable. They spent the next few hours repairing the damage to the ship and charting a course to a distant star system where they could lie low. Seraphis worked alongside Marcus, her movements fluid and precise. Despite everything they had been through, she seemed at peace. "You know," Marcus said as they finished the repairs, "this wasn't exactly what I signed up for when you walked into my workshop." Seraphis smiled faintly. "And yet, you stayed." He shrugged. "Guess I've got a thing for impossible challenges." She stepped closer, her gaze steady. "You are more than an engineer, Marcus Cole. You are extraordinary." He felt a warmth rise in his chest, but he deflected with a grin. "Extraordinary, huh? Don't go inflating my ego." Her smile widened, and for the first time, it felt like they were truly free. As the ship drifted through the vast expanse of space, Marcus and Seraphis sat side by side in the cockpit, gazing at the stars. Their journey was far from over, but in that moment, they had found something neither of them had expected: hope, and perhaps something even more profound: